Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm playing the highly requested variant Drawback chess, where each player is randomly assigned a drawback, like Lame Duck, where you're not allowed to move your king, or Pac-Man, where if you can take a pawn, then you must, or even the True Gentleman, where you can never capture the queen. My goal is to win 3 games. Let's get started with game number 1. Alright, our assigned drawback is Stage Fright. You can't move to the center 4 squares. Okay, so obviously I can't play a London, so let's play b3. Keep things interesting. I might even go double fianchetto here. I'll probably go double fianchetto because it gives me an excuse to look like I'm developing normally and actually control central squares, which will be crucial anyways, but without giving away exactly what my issue is. Actually, I could go e3 as well, develop like this. I could even play f4, mount a kingside attack, but without actually touching the center squares. Let's play bishop to b2. This is like against everything that I teach on this channel, that we fight for the center squares, and now I'm not actually allowed to even touch them. I can't even place a piece there. Okay, so obviously my opponent does not have the same drawback as me. Hopefully my opponent has a similarly difficult drawback, because not being able to touch the center is quite difficult. We'll make do though. We'll play like f4, knight to f3, bishop to e2. We'll fight for the dark squares without actually jumping into them. Let's play d3. I'm not really interested in whatever this is looking at. With any luck, we can try and figure out what our opponent's drawback is. I mean, like I said, obviously it's not ours, and there's already a pawn on d5. Okay, we get e6. I mean, honestly, it looks like my opponent is playing very normal chess. We'll play knight to d2, and with any luck, we'll get like bishop d6 and then f4. Okay, we get knight to f6, which is still very, very normal. Truth be told, I could even play knight to f3, bishop e2, castle, and my opponent might even think it's a normal opening. But I'd like to make the impression that I'm actually doing something. Okay, if f4, knight g4 targeting e3, what do? I think about the mistakes I've made. Let's play h3 first to cover g4. Hopefully all these weird moves are throwing off my opponent. We get bishop to d6. Now we'll play, well, even now, f4, knight h5. This is weak. Okay, I might have to succumb to my fate here. I'll just play knight to f3, bishop e2, castle, and try to make it look like a normal opening. Okay, my opponent castles. Okay, we get knight to d7. Honestly, I have no idea what my opponent's drawback could possibly be here. I mean, it doesn't look like my opponent is afraid of captures. They're playing for the center quite normally. They've castled. The move order wasn't particularly strange. I'll go ahead and castle as well. I guess you could make the same argument for myself. And my drawback seems like it would be pretty obvious, right? Because I haven't fought for the center at all. But if this is my normal opening, maybe it's not so obvious. We'll go ahead and play rook to e1 here. We have to play outside of the center, so maybe we can get this maneuver. I'm not really sure what I'm getting at here. b5. Let's play c4 and just see what my opponent does. I'm starting to believe their drawback may have to do with captures. We'll try to see if we notice any weird patterns about the way that my opponent is capturing. Avoids the capture, b4. Interesting. I can't actually do anything after this move. I can't take towards the center. I can't push e4. I can't push d4, because all of those are central moves. But I can push a3. And we'll get even more information about how my opponent actually captures, or if my opponent even wants to recapture. Okay, a5, I could close the position, or I could take and see if my opponent recaptures. The only issue is if I take, we open up this file. Actually, that's not an issue at all. That would be quite convenient, because then I can avoid a center battle. Just play like queen to c2, bring my rooks over, and I actually might be fine there. So I'll take on b4. I've also just noticed that the time control is 5 plus 5. Okay, rooks are looking at each other, so I'll move my queen out of the way, connect the rooks. Okay, h6 seems like a kind of waiting move. Like, I'm not really sure what to do, so I'll just push h6. I mean, it's possible that my opponent was calculating this and wants to defend the bishop and keep it on this diagonal, or create an escape square for the king. I mean, this is a multifunctional move, but it also seems a little bit randomly placed. Let's take this rook. Right, my opponent has to recapture with the queen, and then I can control the open file with my own rook. Okay, queen recaptures, so doesn't seem to have any problems with recapturing. We'll play rook to a1. Okay, queen to b7, very nice, controls the open file, so even though I'm the only one sitting on it right now, it's not like I can actually do anything about it. Also threatens rook to a8, so the rooks are looking at each other once more. I mean, I guess I'll just make a waiting move as well. I'll play knight to e1 here. And I'm not even really sure what I'm looking for. I'm just kind of sitting around. To be fair, my knight controls these squares, but it can't actually move on those squares. So I'm more interested in my opponent playing something like this so I can close the position and have the center be basically a non-issue, or at least take so I can start moving some pieces on the outer center. We get rook to a8. The rooks are now looking at each other. I'll play my queen back so I can recapture with the queen and have somebody else on the open file. It's unclear what it is my opponent is avoiding. Honestly, it seems like my opponent is playing a very, very normal chess game right now. Knight to e5. I can't actually touch that knight. But it's not threatening anything thanks to this knight to e1 move. So I could capture and then offer a queen trade and then put my queen on and create this battery. Let's do that. Let's give that a try. Take. We give check, which can also sometimes be an issue. We'll see how my opponent reacts. Okay, my opponent just takes as normal. We'll play queen to a1. Queens are now seeing each other. It's kind of rough because since I'm new to this game, I'm not really familiar with any of the drawbacks. So I'm not actually sure what I'm looking for. I'm just trying to make connections where there might not be any, right? I'm kind of pulling a Kramnik here. I see anything weird and I'm like, that must be the drawback, but no such luck, right? Everything has been perfectly normal for a full 21 moves. I wonder if I play f4 here, if my opponent will actually move the knight, or if my opponent will know that I can't take in the center. Let's try it. f4. If my opponent moves the knight, then it's clear my opponent has no idea what's happening or what my drawback might be. But I feel like it's kind of obvious, right? I have all of these pieces around the center, but I don't have any pieces in the center. We'll see if my opponent is actually willing to take that risk, though, on whether or not I can take. Okay, he's not willing to take the risk. My opponent moves back the knight, so I guess we're getting at something. Let's go ahead and move the king towards the center. And I guess our whole attack is now like g4, h4, g5, right? Because we can't move in the center. Best case scenario, the center gets locked up. So we'll play g4 here, start pushing along the outside of the board. Okay, bishop back to h7, very natural move. Let's play h4, continue to grab some space on the side. It's a very unnatural attack. In this kind of position with all of your pieces in the center, the bishop on the long diagonal, normally you want to push like e4, e5, grab some space, create some, practical issues for your opponent in the center of the board, where your pieces are always going to be the most powerful. But I have no way of doing that. So I'm stuck with this flimsy little attack on the side of the board. Knight defends g7, so even though it opens up the long diagonal, doesn't really create any opportunities for me. Let's go ahead and start moving some pieces towards this side of the board, since that's where I have to operate anyways. I'll kind of just leave this bishop holding on to d3, and I think everybody else can go, have a good time on this side of the board, where the party is going to be. So let's play knight to g2. All right, we get king to f7. I mean, my opponent still hasn't played any weird moves that I feel like I should be suspicious of. Let's go ahead and push g5. I mean, let's just start grabbing some space. Maybe we can give some checks. Maybe there's some weird rule that we'll discover on the way. Let's take back. All right, we get bishop to f5, which I think is probably the first slightly weird move that we've gotten. But you could justify it, right? Maybe he thinks that the bishop gets more play along this diagonal. I mean, it's possible that's the line of reasoning. Let's play king to g3 to not allow the bishop into our position, and then we can play knight to h4. Support g6, hit the bishop, and I think we'll be looking pretty all right in that position. I mean, if we can get a knight trade for the bishop, that'd probably be ideal. Get some pressure off of this pawn. Left with the bishop pairs, so if the position ever opens up, we'll have a clear advantage. Okay, knight to c7. I guess knight to h4, let's target the bishop. As the pieces start running down, I feel like it should become more apparent to me what my opponent's rule is. I mean, it'd be obvious to me, I think. Maybe it's because I know my own rule, but I feel like it would be obvious to me that I can't move in the center. With all of this side attack and all of my pieces weirdly moving around the center, I feel like that would be obvious to me. We'll go ahead and take on g6. Okay, we get the recapture with the king. We'll go ahead and play, well, if check. Yeah, check looks good there. We'll play check. Okay, the king moves back. I could come in with the bishop check, move the king even further back. And since this bishop isn't actually tied down to d3 anymore, we'll go ahead and play that. Bishop to h5 check. I like that I'm kind of controlling through the center without actually having a piece in the center. It just depends on how long my opponent goes before he believes that. g6. I can't just take with check. I could even take with the knight and set up discovered check. Interesting. I'll take with the bishop and just give check. Not really sure. Oh, maybe that's part of the rule. Okay, my opponent is in check, but my opponent was in check earlier and didn't have to move a pawn. So that could just be a blunder, but it's very suspicious. Let's see. Let's move our king forward. There's no check because the pawn is pinned to the king. let's just keep applying a little bit of pressure here. I feel like we're getting to something. Let's keep applying pressure to the king, move our pieces in that general direction, and we might actually have a successful flank attack here. We might even discover what the rule is. Okay, knight to f8. Threatens to take the free bishop, obviously, but hangs this pawn with check. In fact, I'll take it with the bishop. Aha, check. We move the king back, forced. And this is looking very, very sketchy for black here. Okay, king moves back. f5, more pressure on the position. This looks very, very promising. Even without knowing whatever my opponent's rule is, this looks very, very good. Okay, I could take with my pawn, or I could take with the knight. I think it makes more sense to take with the knight. Have more pieces on top of the position. If takes, I just take back with the king. We have a passed pawn, which is always good. Okay, we get the capture with the pawn. We'll go ahead and take back with the king. I think it's quite funny how they named the stage fright because you can't move to the center. I've just put that together. That's quite funny. King to f7. Let's play check and move the king out of there. Play g6, g7, g8. Get a queen, celebrate, fists in the air, jumping for joy. I still haven't figured out what my opponent's rule is, which is really interesting. I guess my opponent's done a very good job of concealing it, or I'm blind as a bat, and those of you that play this variant have been pointing at all the obvious ways that I should have figured it out by now, but we'll see. We'll learn as we go. Okay, we'll push the pawn. Knight to f7 is possible. Okay, knight to e8 threatens the bishop, which would remove the guard of the knight. If knight to f7 now takes, I could even just take the bishop. So we'll play that. Or takes, I could take back, allow the bishop to move away. It's not as promising, I feel. Okay, the bishop moves back to f8. It's crazy because I still can't take the center pawn. I still can't push. So we'll have to work our way around this. Let's play knight to d8 with ideas of knight b7, knight c5 maybe. Okay, we do get that capture. We'll recapture with this pawn because I don't want to give my opponent a passed pawn by taking this way. Okay, we'll take. This should be totally fine for me still. Bishop g7 check, but doesn't actually skew or anything. So I'll move, let's see, let's move over to e6. Maybe we can hunt these pawns. Okay, bishop to h6 clearly targets this pawn. I can't actually move it. I'm down to 50 seconds. Let's just play this. Okay, obviously we get that capture. Let's play, okay, if king to d6, I get quite far away from this pawn, but all of these pawns can promote because they don't look at the center. So that should be fine. King here, takes. Hopefully we get the trade and we can take the last pawn, and that should be completely winning. Should be completely winning. No guarantees. Okay, king to g7 as expected. We'll go ahead and take this pawn. Okay, we get the recapture on g6 instead. So we'll play knight to d3, force my opponent to defend this pawn, and then I can just push c5, c6, c7, c8, and that shouldn't be a problem for me. Ooh, interesting. c5? Sacrifice, I just take back, force promotion. Oh, very interesting. Okay, actually I'm gonna take with the knight. Actually, no, I'll take with the king, right? Because I still can't move in the center. Okay, now I'll take with the knight. My king stops the opponent's king from crossing through. King to d4. Oh, and I actually can't take because I can't move towards the center. Okay. Wow, that's really confusing. Okay, king to b5 maybe is fine. King to c5. I can definitely just take that though, right? Sweet, and we won. Okay, we won our first game, which is awesome. What was my opponent's drawback? Your opponent's drawback was secret garden. You have a secret garden in front of your pawns. You can't move onto it, and if your opponent tramples it, moves onto it, you lose. That is extremely confusing. Secret garden, you have a secret garden in front of your pawns. You can't move onto it, and if your opponent tramples it, you lose. I have no idea what that would even look like. Let's hit OK. Maybe we can see it from our opponent's perspective. Their message, your garden. Oh, okay, let's see. Your garden is on b6 and c6. And oh, that explains b5, right? Because the natural move here is not b5. The natural move here is e5, push into the center, look for some sort of play in the middle of the board. b5 makes a lot of sense, and it also makes a lot of sense why my opponent decided to close the position, right? Protecting b6 and c6. Okay, very interesting, but we did win our first game. Let's move on to game number 2. All right, game number 2, we get the white pieces again. Bongcloud, when your king is on the back rank, you can only move pawns and kings. Okay, gotcha. Let's play... So where do I want to put my king? Nowhere, honestly. Let's play this with the idea that I'll play king to f2, and then I can do all my pieces normally. So in the perfect world, I play like g3, king f2, king g2. I leave my king there and I should be fine. So let's play g3. Obviously my opponent plays e5 in hopes that I'll play g4 and, get checkmated in 2. King to f2. I've now officially developed my king, so I can move all of my other pieces now. King to g2 was the plan all along, so that works. Bishop to e6. Let's play c3 looking for d4. Nice. My opponent seems to be looking for h3, but that's protected, so d4 cuts off the bishop from removing the knight. Okay, bishop moves back to d6. My opponent is adamant about this attack, which, you know what? Fair play. I probably would be as well. Let's go ahead and take on e5. Maybe with e4 we can trade the queens and be in a safer position. Right, since I need to leave my king basically a little bit unprotected to some extent, a trade of queens is probably in my favor in this position. We'll go ahead and take. Okay, bishop takes back. Knight g4 could be an issue because this is pinned. Let's play c4 and try to force the issue of the queen trade. That would probably solve a lot of my problems. Okay, we do get bishop to c6, so we'll go ahead and play check, trade the queens. Bishop takes back, nice. Let's play now. Knight to c3, and I really just need normal development. I mean, my opponent's probably going to castle, so we'll play bishop to e3, seems the most natural square for the bishop. And then we can play like bishop d3, knight to e2, bring the rooks towards the center, and I think we have some fair play there. Bishop to d3 kind of invites this check. I take back, rook comes into play, which I'm not super happy about. So let's play bishop to e2 instead. And then I'll probably develop the knight this way, which I know looks really, really ugly, but seems to be the most convenient way to keep my king here. Okay, bishop takes, I'll take back. That seems totally fine. I guess it doubles the pawns, which is not ideal, but it's drawback chess. How much do you want, Okay, h6. We'll go ahead and play knight to h3. And then we're just looking to play on the open and semi-open files. Okay, rook to e8 targets the bishop. So I basically have to play king to f2 drops the knight. Ooh, whoa. I just walked into that, didn't I? Oh my goodness. Oh, a disgusting tactic. Okay. Wow, I really don't think there's a way out of this for me. That is really unfortunate. If I move the bishop, I lose the bishop on e2. If I move the king to protect the bishop, I lose the knight, and there's no other way to protect the bishop. Wow, that is pretty stinky. Okay, let's just play king to f2. Let's bite the bullet. With any luck, maybe we can figure out what my opponent's drawback is. It clearly isn't, you're not allowed to take knights, right? Definitely took the knight. Let's go ahead and jump onto the open file. Okay, bishop moves back to e6. Again, very natural move. I don't see anything suspicious about that. If anything, it's targeting a weakness. It's extremely sound chess. Let's play bishop to d4. Maybe we can undouble our pawns. And if we can't, then at least we stop knight to e5 targeting c4. Okay, we get a6, which is kind of a weird move. I guess if my opponent's intention is to move the knight, then it moves the pawn out of danger, so I guess that makes some sense. Let's go ahead and double the rooks, get more pieces into the game, and I guess the more pressure I put on my opponent, the easier it should be to figure out what the drawback is. Okay, we do get knight to a5. I guess I could push the pawn and try to save it, so let's give that a shot. Bishop to c4, put some pressure on this bishop. If takes, then we just kind of trade off into an endgame where I'm down a piece, which is not ideal. So, move the bishop back. I'm not interested in trades. We're both down to a minute now, which with any luck can come into play here. I kind of need my opponent in some time pressure if I want any chances here. Maybe bishop to a4, hitting the rook. I can double up like I intended to in the first place. Bishop here is actually doing a good job of not allowing any trades, so maybe that's all right. Okay, opponent officially has less time than us, and we only have 2 seconds of increment. So my opponent can't do too much thinking. Okay, knight to c6, hits the bishop. We'll go ahead and pin it. If bishop to b5, maybe bishop back, hits f7, takes. So I'm still down a piece, and I was still forced into a trade, but at least there's some ideas of, creating some attacks. Okay, bishop back, we'll play bishop b3. There might even be a4 at some point, trapping the bishop, depending on if this trade happens. Okay, it does. We'll go ahead and take back, forced. Opponent is down to 20 seconds, and with all the love in the world, I'm going to have to try to flag my opponent. So, let's start with this. We'll go ahead and just play defensive chess. As long as I don't lose anything outright, I can win on time. Bishop c6 is basically forced. If bishop d7, it hangs the knight, right? We'll double up our rooks. Nice and protected chess, nothing suspicious. We'll play this to protect this square. Okay, my opponent is getting an idea of what I'm doing, which is just playing very, very fast. My opponent is down to 5 seconds now. We'll go ahead and trade. Why not? Pre-move f4. I love that there's pre-moves. That's extremely helpful. Okay, knight comes in. We'll go ahead and target the knight. Oh, there's this check. Oh no, oh, but he doesn't see it. Okay, sweet. Let's hit the knight again. Seems like the knight is trapped now. Oh, that's hanging, sure, why not? Let's play this, try to create some weaknesses in the position. Wow, does not allow that. Interesting, let's move the king away for sure. Still can't have the king on the back rank, still an issue for us. There's this, but that loses the knight. Okay, doubles the rooks, I'll double up as well. Opponent's down to 1 second now, not a lot of time to think here. Sure, I'm just making moves at this point. H5 is kind of annoying, there's check. Okay, I'll move back. Hung this pawn now. Not the best bullet that I've ever played, but we do win on time. Dirtiest flag probably of my whole career, but we do walk away with the victory. My opponent is slamming his computer into the wall right now, and I feel terrible, but we did get the win. Okay, what on earth was my opponent's drawback? Your opponent's drawback was diplomatic immunity. You can't capture a piece that just moved unless that move was a capture. That sounds like Dr. Seuss. Let me read that one more time. You can't capture a piece that just moved unless that move was a capture. If I were to move into his position in such a way that I don't capture a piece, my opponent would not have been allowed to recapture. Okay, mildly amusing, I guess. Both relatively easy on this scale, and I think that's a fair assessment. We are 2 for 2. With any luck, we'll win this one fairly. Let's move on to game number 3. All right, we're back with game number 3. Escort mission. If your king can capture, it must. Okay, definitely going to fianchetto. I'm not risking this one at all. Knight to f3, bishop g2, fianchetto. As many pieces around my king as possible, I think is what makes the most sense. We'll go ahead and get this. Oh, why is my opponent's name so depressing? Sad Blue Monkey. That made me sad just reading it. All right, king seems decently protected now. Now we just have to be concerned about something like this, or bishop f5 works as well. Queen d7 looking for bishop to h5 would be the only concern because of the recapture idea. Actually, it wouldn't be a concern. The only point is that if my king can recapture, it must. So I guess I would just recapture and that would look very natural. Let's play d3, c4, a3, b4, try to play on the queen side a little bit, move away from the king since I'm not really interested in any of those problems. Okay, bishop to d6, we'll go ahead and play bishop to g5 just to be annoying, just to pin the piece. Okay, we do get booted right away, so we can either trade and then play knight to c3 or bishop to d2, which is probably the more sound move. We'll play bishop back to d2, a little bit boring, but conceptually good. So we'll go ahead and take knight c3. This is pretty standard stuff. Sure, knight to c3 we've now developed. There's ideas of, I don't know, rook to c1, knight to b5 even. Okay, d4 is kind of pressing, so we could play knight to b5 right now. Sorry about that arrow. Knight to b5 pushes the bishop back. Wow, these arrows are horrendous. Knight to a3, we could reroute to c4. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but it's probably fine. And I'm really going to try my best to see if I can figure out what on earth my opponent's drawback is, because my last 2 opponents have done a great job of not giving me the slightest clue. We'll go ahead and take, which is a little bit weird. I mean, that bishop is probably better than my knight, who's inevitably getting booted anyways, but we'll play a3, look for b4, rook to c1, along the lines of what we talked about at the beginning of the game, although not exactly the same. Okay, queen to e6, maybe lining up to put some pressure on e2 with the rook, which I guess is reasonable. We'll play b4, because it's really not a concern. We can just play rook to e1 and protect it. Bishop to h3, never mind. He is going for this idea after all, but takes, and I should be totally okay. So, let's play rook to c1. Okay, we get knight to e5, seems to invite this. Takes, bishop f4, takes. I mean, that should be good for me. We'll go ahead and capture that. I'm sure the idea is to remove the defender of g4, so, right, takes, and there's probably ideas of, I don't know, takes, knight g4, queen to h5, looking for this mate. It's a little bit convoluted, but I can see the line of reasoning. Okay, we do get that recapture. Bishop to f4 would kind of just allow queen to h5, so instead we'll play rook to c5, so that queen to h5 isn't possible anymore. Right, and as long as the queen can't get on the h-file, then knight to g4 really doesn't accomplish all that much. Queen goes back to e6, but there's still no entry point. So, let's play a little bit interesting. Let's play queen to c1. I know it hangs e2, but I'm really curious to see if this works. Takes, queen takes back, there's rook to g5 check, very scary. Okay, what if I take right now? Pawn takes back, queen takes, sure. Knight to h7 offers a queen trade. This check doesn't work because the knight protects it. Okay, so that's lame, that doesn't work. In that case, let's try e3, and then maybe we can fight for e4, f4, start grabbing some space in the center. Okay, we get the capture. We'll go ahead and take back with the bishop. And I might even play rook to e1 here. Ooh, I don't know if it works now though. Rook to e1. If I take with the bishop, the queen takes, and it doesn't seem like I'd have a concrete follow-up to that. So, oh, I'm running low on time as well, under a minute. I'm just not really sure what I'm looking for here. Let's play d4. Let's play d4. There is this check. I just move back. Maybe I can play rook to e5. That's the idea of d4. It's a little bit lame now that I think about it, but knight to g4 threatens the capture. I'll move my bishop out of the way. I'd love to play h3 and get this knight out of here. Okay, queen to e4 is check. Ooh, I have f3, which is amusing. Check. Rook to f2 doesn't work because the knight covers. Okay, I have to move back. And again, my rule is if the king can capture, it must. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of situations where the king can capture and it likes to capture because it wasn't in danger in the first place. Okay, we finally dropped this pawn. Let's play h3 and boot the knight. Knight to f6 would seem to invite bishop e5. No, that's protected too much. Wow, blind as a bat. Blind as a bat. Okay, knight to f6 might actually invite the sacrifice though. Pawn takes back, queen takes. Knight to h7 again seems to just be a general issue. We'll play this in the meantime. Queen to e4, yeah, is a problem. If bishop to e3, there's knight to d5, which isn't comfortable. Okay, we'll play it anyways. I mean, it's not like I have a whole lot of moves to pick from. If anything, knight to d5, I might even just sacrifice and then look for this for bishop takes h6. Because I'm running low enough on time that I really just need to look for practical moves and not overthink everything as much as I am. Let's move the king out of the way. I would like it not to be on the back rank. If this queen would move off this diagonal, that'd be a huge favor. Because then I'd actually consider this. Oh, queen to f3. But if I take, then f2 is hanging, so didn't accomplish much with that. 20 seconds. Oh, I don't want to fold under pressure, but I'm not really sure what my idea is here. Oh no, I've dropped rook to d1. Oh, how did I not see that? That's like the most obvious idea in the universe. Okay, I have to take because this is forced. Okay, let's play this. Check, because why not check, pretty much? Let's keep the rook somewhere near where it can threaten the king, I guess. Knight to e4, huge issue. We'll go ahead and take the pawn. Okay, we'll take. I'll just move back. Sure, takes. Takes me for everything I have. We'll take this pawn as well. Craziest thing is I still have no idea what my opponent's rule is. I'm sure there's a series of checks here that would win the rook. I'm not going to bother to calculate it. I'm just fairly confident that it's there. This is just devastating. Okay, rook back, sure. We'll try to fight until the last move. Sure, I'll block again. Sure, queen takes. And I'm really just buying time here. My opponent should really just promote and then finish me off clean. Terrible situation. And then we have mate on h3. We'll see if my opponent sees it. My opponent does in fact see it. This is drawback chess, so I guess oh, that's right, I have to take with the king if I can. And we lose the game. Oh my goodness. Okay, my opponent's drawback was femme fatale. You can only capture their king with a queen? That is so oddly specific considering I blundered my queen this game. Wow, that is so incredibly oddly specific. Okay, we're 2 out of 3. Let's go ahead and move on to game number 4. All right, we finally get the black pieces. Exclusivity clause. You can't move to squares that more than one of your pieces can move to. Oh my goodness, you've got to be kidding me. Okay, so for example, I can't move here because my knight could also move there. Wow, that is horrendous. That's so bad. Okay, on the bright side, it shows me what those squares on, which is quite helpful. Let's play d5. Let's play an active game. Go for a little funky Scandinavian and see what we can learn about our opponent's drawback. Okay, we get e5, avoiding the trade. I guess I really need to trade as fast as possible. We'll play c5. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, my opponent doesn't play that, but that would have been probably immediately losing. Oh no, well, I would have had knight to c6. Okay, which I have now anyways. Okay, we're in the clear here. d4. Okay, f4 is a very aggressive way to play. We'll play h5, play equally aggressive, bishop g4. Ooh, bishop g4 without even thinking about it. We could get this trade, which is fine. What? Okay, definitely had to do with the queen. Oh, my opponent resigned! Nice! Okay, opponent's drawback was battle fatigue. When one of your pieces captures, it can't capture again until it... What? When one of your pieces captures, it can't capture again until it has made a non-capturing move. Okay, first things first. My drawback was incredibly hard, apparently, and my opponent's drawback was incredibly easy. But if I had to guess what happened, my opponent misread his drawback and took on g4 without actually understanding what the drawback was. So even though my opponent had a much easier drawback than I had, my opponent did not understand what was happening probably. But we get 3 victories finally. This was quite excruciating. I understand now why you guys recommended this to me. It's kind of like the variants that I do, except with my variants, it applies to both of us, and I know what it is ahead of time. But here, you have to think on your feet, and you don't know what your opponent's drawback is. So, 2 times the headache, but I'll probably revisit this in the future. This was quite fun. If you guys did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know down below if you particularly enjoyed this variant, or if there's any other variants that you guys want me to try, because as I've learned, you guys usually know better variants than I do. And I will see you guys in the next one.